we are getting yet another winter-oriented unit in War of the Visions, and this one is a wind element unit, which I am personally very happy for, and it's Luartha, which is also pretty cool. But on the downside, her banner is terrible, and it's actually really hard to guarantee her you start going for her. So unless you have a lot of this saved up and there's nothing in the near future that you want to get, I don't necessarily recommend going for her. So let's take a look at her kit. Now, before we go too deep, I do have an Amazon affiliate link, so all my videos are sponsored by Amazon, like many other War of the Visions content creator. If you are in a region where you can use Amazon coins, you're actually saving some money on your viz, while also encouraging the channel whose link you use. I have a link in all the description of my videos, so if you want to encourage this channel, go ahead and do it. So looking at Luartha, she's got a brand new job. It's a spear using job, and it only wears clothing and hats and spears. So you're not actually using heavy armors, you cannot have Keen Blade on, but you can have some evasion gear, which is interesting for the wind meta that's very evasion heavy. Now she herself is not an evasion-oriented character. She's more of a damage dealer. She can have decent HP. It's not that hard to build her with 7.5k HP or so, and then she does a decent amount of damage. She is revolving around crit, which I usually don't like very much, but with the amount of extra crit damage she has in her kit, and with the Wind Vision card like near VC, she can actually get very decent crits that do roughly 40% extra damage, which is a lot more than any other crit-oriented unit in the game. So I usually say I dislike building for crit, but in her specific case, and the way her kit is built, I think it's actually worth it. Then she's got good missile, good pierce resistance, which is cool. I think the one thing that's really unique about her is the fact that she can potentially immobilize enemies from range 6. So if you're playing manually or in some PvE matches or in some scenarios, you can leverage that. Get somebody immobilized from very far away, pairing her with ranged attackers and just raining down attacks on enemies that can't get to you. She can also enable damage dealers by breaking barriers, reducing defense, disabling reactions, and she's got some pretty good buffs for your team, so she's not a very selfish character. She is weak to magic, and doesn't have great status resistances, so there's a bit of a downside to that. And then, yeah, she does have quite a bit of defense penetration as well, so it's hard to mitigate her damage altogether. Now, let's look at her stats, and in order to get a fair comparison, I had to bring over Aranea and Oberon, which means Luartha has really good stats. She's got 3900 HP, which is more than Aranea. Now, with the passives and the rest of her kit, she won't end up being as bulky as Aranea, because she's got defensive passives, while Luartha's passives are more offensive-oriented, so there's a bit of a difference there. She's got 502 attack, which is very good. It's not Aranea level, but it's on par with Oberon, which is quite impressive. Now, Wind does have an item named Wind Spear, but it does not have an element spear like Oberon would have, so that's a lot less damage on her side. Don't expect her to hit as hard as Aranea or Oberon would, because she doesn't have her own type of elemental weapon. The other stats, great agility, 68 is incredible for most units, very high dex, which is kind of a necessity for her because she needs to crit a lot, so that's something that's going for her. At 240 luck, she can reach a decent amount of evasion, but she's not the new 2B, or she's not an evasion-oriented character, so don't think that she'll end up doing that. Good pierce and missile resistance, and weakness to magic. That's a little bit scary, but what concerns me a little bit more is her status effect resistances. She is only resistant to Berserk, Blind, and Paralysis, which means you can stop her, you can charm her, you can disable her, you can immobilize her. There's a lot of stuff you can do to prevent her from doing her job, so you gotta be careful about that a little bit. Overall though, pretty solid stat block. And then her passives are also pretty interesting. I think if you're running her, you need the Trick Lancer Mastery. That one gives you crit rate and crit damage, and she's really oriented around those, but mainly the 40 defense penetration. 15 is not enough to hit a tank. 55 though, you can basically ignore somebody's defense and just go ham, and that is a really good buff to have. Then, it depends what your strategy is. I love the Unwavering Javelinier. It gives you protection against confusion and stun, which is cute, it's not great, but mainly it gives one more square of reach on her immobilizing attack. Now that attack needs to crit to have a chance to immobilize, we'll look at her kit in a minute, but because of that, the crit rate passive goes really well with this one. I think if you're running the Binding Javelin passive, it's because you want also Trick Lancer Mastery. Another option though, if you don't want the extra range, probably mainly if you're playing on auto and you don't want to leverage that counting square things, you're just going to go on auto, it's going to close in on the enemies and use its attacks anyways, then you probably want to go for self-sacrifice just to deal a bunch more damage from the get-go, especially when we get the wind tank Joom. This is going to be a great combo because even though you're making Luartha herself a little bit more squishy, you'll have a tank that takes the hit anyway, so you just want to deal as much damage as you could. In terms of counter abilities, it's a tough call. Counter Trick has one more range and a better chance to proc, and it deals a preemptive poke, which is good, but Dragon's Blade is always there. It's on the table, and it heals you back for the damage it does, so if you do survive the hit, and, you know, she's going to have 7,000 HP, so pretty good chances of surviving them, then the counter Dragon's Blade, I think, is a little bit superior. Now, her main job is so packed with a lot of stuff that it barely fits on my page, but let's go. First ability has a cost of 17, so she doesn't have a cheap 12 AP cost ability like a lot of other characters. Everything she has is fairly expensive. You will need some form of AP generation, be it Belle's, Lucio's TMR, Noctis's TMR. Knock yourselves out, but you need one of those. The Thick Thrust is going to decrease agility and attack to the targets it hit. Mainly the agility decrease, I think, is fun. Attack decrease, not that impactful, in my opinion. She's got the ability to increase attack in an AoE, which is good, but I would love the other AoE buff she has a lot more, which increases missile resistance, accuracy, and pierce attack for herself. So it's a really solid buff overall. Then the Binding Javelin is the ability I like the most in her kit. You've got a 5 square range or a 6 square range if you're using the right passive, in which you'll do a 165 mod attack that can inflict Immobilize if you crit, and then decreases healing power as well. Now, a 50% base chance to Immobilize is a very high chance. You know, the limit breaks are on 68% base chance, and they're almost guaranteed. This is just slightly below. You do need to crit, though, so if you're fighting an enemy with a lot of crit avoidance, that might not land, but I think she's got enough luck and crit passives that is going to be fairly reliable, in my opinion. Then you get the Barrier Break Lance. It's upgraded by her EX job, so it's going to be an ability that is piercing, so it's in a line. It breaks barrier, reduces counter chance, and then deals damage. That's pretty good, but the other ability, Javelin Fall, is going to do a lot more damage because it decreases defense by 30 before dealing damage. It's also an AoE attack, which is good. Now, all the abilities in this kit have a 165 mod and lower. This is not top tier damage, but the mod calculation for Luartha is 120% of her attack, so she scales off of attack very well, just like Aranea, but the mods are lower. Don't expect her to hit just as hard, I think. She'll be do a little bit less damage than somebody like Aranea or Oberon, but she's got a lot more utilities or ways to go around an enemy with good defenses. Now, the sub-job in that new Trick Lancer job is interesting. You get a piercing attack that, if you crit, decreases AP by 20. This is cute, but in a lot of matchups, I feel like 20 AP is just not enough to make it a great ability. If you were gaining this AP back and you could spam it, maybe, but I think the other stuff in her main job is a little bit better. The Cross Break, though, is kind of cute. You're going to hit in an AoE around you, so it's a new pattern that you add to this character's attacks, and then if you lend it, you decrease critical evasion, meaning you're going to land crits easily and, you know, enable the rest of your kit. Overall, though, I'd probably run the other sub-jobs over this. Her Limit Break is her most damaging ability. It has a super high AP cost, you need bells if you ever want to see this, and a pretty short range, but it has a height range of 2, and it's going to decrease pierce resistance by a significant amount, and then deal 200 mod damage. So it's very high, very damage ability. It's also one of her 2 abilities in her kit that has good height range. So the Binding Javelin that would immobilize at a distance has a height range of 5, you can throw it basically anywhere, and then this ability, her Limit Break, has a height range of 2. The rest of her kit is all height range 1, so you need to be on the same elevation as your enemy to use it. Now, her sub-jobs, I can't say I'm too excited about. She's got the Soldier sub-job, but no Drain Force or anything that exceptional. If you're equipping this, there are 2 reasons. Either you have the Exorcist Vision card and you want to use the triple trick attack, or you want to use some slash attacks and have some variations in the types of attacks you can use. Potentially, if you're pairing her with Joom in the future, or To Be, and you want to do some slash attack chains or decrease the enemy's slash resistance and then hit, this could be good. But otherwise, her main job has really good attacks. I would probably use Dragoon more more, just because of the extra mobility you can have if you're playing manually. Dragon Standard is a great ability, and then Horizontal Jump has a lot more range and higher mod than everything in her kit, so you could use that to engage on your enemy with a 220 mod instead of a 165 mod attack, which is pretty good overall. So there are reasons to run these. I think Dragoon is going to be the best pick in most of the cases. Now let's look at a sample build, and I'll take this as an opportunity to talk about the vision card that's going to be released alongside her. Now, I will cover that VC in a second video, so I'll go much more in depth over there, but it is a really good VC just because it gives the 50% attack for wind units on top of 25% extra HP. When I've been playing Ice lately, I really love using the Freezus VC because that extra bit of HP on everybody is often the difference between dying in 1 or 2 hits, and that has made a major difference in my fights. So having a VC that can give me 25% HP and 50% attack together seems really good, and then, you know, Luartha herself gets 20 pierce attack up with it. So in this sample build, I'm using the 3 VCs that you guys see on screen, and she's been paired with 2 other wind units that have wind passives, so that's where all these stats come from. But still, she's walking in there with 7,000 HP, 1400 attack. I was using the self-sacrifice passive and a +5 wind spear, so these are not necessarily equipments that all players have. If you don't have a wind spear, she's still going to be very strong with other types of seer, but obviously you'll have a bit less agility and a bit less pierce attack. It's just the best spear in the game right now for this. Still though, very high amount of damage and decent bulk, even though she's got weaker resistances because of self-sacrifice, so I think she'll do really well with stats like these. Then good partners for her would be long-range characters like Corwell and Halloween Little Leela that can poke the enemy at a distance once you immobilize them and they can't get to you. If you're able to keep hitting and killing them, you're not even taking any kind of risk in the match, so that would be an interesting way to play her. She would pair naturally well with Joom or Tabi, especially Tabi has slash attacks and pierce attacks. If you're equipping the new vision card on Luartha, she gets a 3-hit wind pierce attack that Tabi can then cap for crazy damage. That could be good for some raids, for some box events, or just some PvP shenanigans that you want to do. Otherwise, I would love trying her with either other Pierce units, somebody that can decrease Pierce resistance would go well with her, or just a hyper support like Aerith or Miranda or Phoebe, where you can haste her, quicken her, give her re-raise, and just have a very powerful character that's hard to take down and has a lot of damage. Naturally, for a build like this, you definitely want her to be the ones with bells or any other means of AP generation because she won't be able to kill many people if you don't have that. So, all in all, how good is she? I think she's completely unnecessary for PvE. There are better units for that, and she starts with too low of an AP for a team of 5. You can't equip all of them with AP generation items. She's going to be really good in Arena. If you can target the right enemies, I think she'll do wonders, so a solid 8 out of 10. I think she would do really well in Guild Battle, and my thinking here is Joom is about to get released. So this is a rating with Joom, but right now, what seems to be destroying guilds, from my observations, is really those Jaden, Elena, Yuna, or Fina, or whoever else teams, and they mainly rely on Jaden's damage early on, followed by Elena's attacks. And guess what? Jaden's weak to pierce attack. If you can just snipe him with a long-range spear and kill him, that's going to be really good. And then Joom is going to survive these attacks very well. So I feel like this is going to shake up the guild battle meta quite a bit, and in this specific context, she's going to do well, but maybe not immediately. You might have to wait a couple weeks to get her partner to make her work that well. In Odo class matches, she would probably do pretty well. Odo being blind, I don't think she has that many clear weaknesses that she's going to just directly lose to, with the exception of Valentin Salir. That is the one character that would shut you down very, very hard. And then in manual play, a solid 8 out of 10 again. I think you can do shenanigans with Immobilize in a long range and then poke enemies, but this is a very specific strategy. And outside of that, it's hard to justify, I think, her cost 90. I think she's a really good unit, and if she was cost 80 or cost 70, I would rate her maybe even a 10. But because she has such a high cost in your team composition, I don't know how much you can build her to be the sole carry of your team, so I'm going to have to stick with an 8 here. But yeah, should you go for her? I'll say no, sadly. I think she's a great unit. She's going to be very interesting, but her banner is terrible. You need to, if you want to be absolutely certain to pity her, you need to spend 42,000 Viz, which seems insane to me. So if you have the spare Viz and you don't think investing into her will make you miss some upcoming stuff, then sure, go ahead. If you're a heavy spender or you saved a lot, she'll be very fun. But this is something that would limit a lot of players from getting her, and then I think she's hard to build around. She will be working very well with Joom, who's not going to be an easy character to get from what I've understood on the JP side, and then to get the most out of her, you need either the vision card that's released right now that is time limited, you would need somebody like To Be or Tifa or Halloween Little Leela to pair with her, which are all time limited units that you might not have, and then ideally, you know, the Nier VC that was released alongside her because it gives crit damage, or maybe the Exorcist VC that's also time limited that gives extra crit rate to everybody. So there's a lot of stuff for Win that have been time limited, and that if you don't own, you're not going to be able to make the most out of that character. So that's another reason why I would not necessarily recommend building her. With all that said, I was influenced on my class match stream this morning by Lazarus to go for her, and I did, and thank you, Lazarus. It was worth it. I do believe I'll be able to have a lot of fun with that unit, so I'm very curious to build her. I will be showcasing her in arena videos in the next couple weeks, so tune in for that. But yeah, that is going to be it from me. I would be very curious to hear your intentions. Do you guys think this is a terrible banner and you're going to skip? Or you like Luartha because she was recently featured in story, or I don't know why? Let me know what you think. So that's going to be it from me. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.